Guide Homer to the mattress square and true. Okay.
You know, normally I'd start a video like this with an intro about why platform fighters are cool and how we're in the middle of a renaissance for the genre, but I've done that like 3 times before already. So instead, I'm gonna tell you a story. When I was a kid, I got a Wii for Christmas, along with some banger games. Twilight Princess, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, but there was one game that I had my eye on, other than Smash Bros, of course. I had seen it in a Big Lots store many times before, along with other budget titles. I recognized the characters on the front as Sonic the Hedgehog, Dr. Robotnik, and Ai, characters that I had fondness for. That game was Sonic and SEGA All-Stars Racing. And outside of Brawl itself, it was by far the game I spent the most time with on that Wii. Ever since that day, I've been a big fan of SEGA. Not so much Sonic specifically, but the extended SEGA universe outside of the Blue Blurs games. I've played several of their classics and gained an interest in their diverse lineup. And for years I've been asking myself the same question. Why hasn't SEGA done a Smash Bros yet? If there's a company with characters just as iconic to games to rival Nintendo, it's PlayStation. But after that, I would argue Sega's importance to the game industry in the 90s helped shape the games industry of today. And as much as I love racing, I think I just love plat fighters a lot more, and that first title showed me just how diverse of a roster a Sega fighting game could be. Too bad the sequel's roster is pretty awful in comparison, but hey, the tracks were phenomenal. Anyway, today we're building a Sega platform fighter roster. So, let's take a look at our criteria for this build. While I'd love to do a roster that's as big as Ultimate, I don't for a second think we'd get one that big. Frankly, I think even the amount I have chosen is way too much to ask for a full game in this day and age, especially from a smaller company like Sega, but I always like to have a little extra fun, because that's what I'm here for, to talk about cool things I like and how different characters could work. I settled on 48 characters for the base roster, and 2 seasons of DLC. As for who and what's eligible for the roster, I'm limiting the base roster to characters and franchises owned by Sega. I'm not discounting the potential for guest characters, but for the base roster I'd like to keep it Sega exclusive. We'll cross the guest character bridge when we come to it. And unlike other roster builds, I don't have any other special criteria. Let's dive right in.
SEGA! Sonic the Hedgehog!
Starting with the most obvious of all, Sonic is the series that's going to have the most reps, by a long shot. The Blue Blur himself is going to be a relatively straightforward character to pick up and play, and we're going to make an effort to make him more unique than his actual Smash counterpart. Sonic can use some of his attacks from Frontiers, Fighters, and in general his animations need to keep that cocky but charming attitude. His specials would include the Spin Dash and Homing Attack, they're too iconic not to, but he'd also be able to utilize the Wisps from Colors for some of his abilities, and has a special ability unique to him, the Boost Gauge. Tapping into his true speed, Sonic can reposition himself far more effectively than anyone else on the roster, though he has to stop using the boost to attack, and when it's empty, it takes a bit to recharge. He can also still be grabbed and attacked while it's active if the opponent can get a hard enough read on him. Sonic's ultimate attack is of course using the Chaos Emeralds to turn into Super Sonic.
SEGA! Tails!
You can't have a Sega fighting game without Sonic's Eternal Player 2, and Tails is more than happy to throw down alongside his best pal. Tails may be light, but like Kirby or Jigglypuff in Smash, he's got a ton of jumps, and while he also has a spin dash, most of his abilities are centered around his genius inventions. Some of them hailing from Sonic Battle, like his energy cannon and boxing glove, some from Tails' Adventure, including bombs, missiles, and tools like his hammer and wrench. By comparison to his hero, Tails has average speed and his best KO options require a lot of setup. Think of how Jimmy Neutron functions in NASB 2 for the best comparison. Naturally, his super move involves his most iconic invention, the Tornado, to fire attacks down on the stage, putting a new meaning on Sky Patrol.
Knuckles!
Rougher than the rest of them, Knuckles is another obvious choice to be included, and thankfully, unlike Sonic and Tails, he's a lot more bread and butter. Knuckles is a brawler true and true, with powerful, meaty punches that take no prisoners. He's comparable in speed to Tails, but to give him a little more sauce, Knuckles' down special allows him to burrow into the ground and return to the surface in a different spot. And he may occasionally find a piece of the Master Emerald. He can carry up to 3 shards and each give him some mild buffs to launch power, but make it a bit harder to combo with. Of course, he's got a really good recovery with his gliding. You'll make the enemies say, "Oh no," as you survive well past their expected KO range.
Amy Rose.
Amy's definitely gonna follow Sonic wherever he goes, so she'd naturally show up here too, and of course, she's packing the Pico Pico hammer. Deceptively fast, closer to Sonic than either Knuckles or Tails, Amy's got her fair share of combo tools and can even mix up her mobility by using the hammer to bounce. But her best KO moves are pretty telegraphed. Amy has no trouble racking up damage on the opponent, but has a difficult time netting KOs and will need to rely harder on hard reads to send people flying, though using that hammer definitely is satisfying. And since it absolutely fits her vibe, you know how Lola Bunny has a heart-shaped reflector move in Multiverses? Yeah, Amy would definitely have that too. And because of the popularity of Sonic Prime, she'd probably have a Rusty Rose skin as well.
Shadow the Hedgehog.
I wouldn't dare to not include the second most popular character in the franchise. Whereas Sonic is most definitely spec'd into a pure speed game plan, the Ultimate Lifeform has got tons of abilities to make him one of the most formidable and versatile opponents. Projectile play with Chaos Spears, a more potent recovery with the new Doom Wings, the ability to counter attacks with Chaos Control. While he lacks Sonic's boost meter mechanic, he's just as fast as his rival, and by using Chaos techniques, he stores up Chaos Energy, which he can release in a massive burst at any point, with the higher amount stored allowing him to net extremely early KOs. And no, he wouldn't use a gun because that joke is way too easy. Maybe he could pull one out as a taunt to tease people though.
Dr. Eggman.
The last core member of the Sonic cast who absolutely needs to be here, the Doctor enters battle using his Eggmobile, but with heavily modded assets and abilities, taking advantage of tools from all of his boss fights throughout the series for his moveset. Wrecking balls, lasers and missiles, explosive toys, drills, you name it, the Doctor's packed it into this new model of his classic Eggmobile. He also floats a bit off the ground, meaning you might miss him if you're targeting low, and to make him even more menacing, he's got a limited amount of super armor per life represented by a shield meter, though it takes an extremely long time to recharge if broken, and he loses that advantage if he's not careful. He can hit like a truck and set traps all over the stage, but without his armor, he gets comboed hard. You gotta know the master plan to claim victory over your foes with him. But that's enough Sonic for now. This is a crossover, after all.
Akira.
The master of Bajiquan from Virtua Fighter enters the ring to prove himself, and while he's rather slow and relies primarily on bread and butter combos to rack up damage, do not underestimate his special moves, because Akira is a master of KOing off the side, a Virtua Fighter staple. His attacks, like in his home series, don't have a huge amount of range. The fighting style is all about explosive shoulder and elbow strikes, and while Akira's movement speed and jump height are pretty pitiful for a platform fighter character, those strikes are faster than you would think. He's a powerhouse of pain that will have people realizing that they're 10 years too early to challenge him, provided they don't just throw him off the ledge first.
Beat.
Hailing from the futuristic urban setting of Tokyo-to, Beat's one of the few characters who might be able to meet Sonic and company on their turf in speed, only to tag it as his own. Beat's inline skates allow him a lot of versatility once he gets going, and they're effective as a weapon too. Kicking and sliding into enemies to keep them at a distance is important to ensure he's not taking a huge amount of damage, because he's relatively light. Beats also got his spray cans to use as both a projectile and a tool to tag opponents with paint, giving him benefits similar to the Inklings in Smash Ultimate. He'd probably also have a teleport move where he disappears in a cloud of spray paint to appear somewhere else. Yes, this is 100% inspired by Kimberly in Street Fighter, but hey, there's no shame in taking inspiration from other sources and taking some creative liberties. You could probably also justify having Gum or other members of the GGs as alternate costumes for him as well.
SEGA! Gilius Thunderhead!
Gilius is kind of the de facto mascot of the Golden Axe titles, as he easily has the most recognizable design, and as the wielder of, well, an axe, he kind of makes himself known. And hey, I think he's the perfect fit for a fighting game here. While most of his attacks swing his heavy axe around with surprising speed, he can net KOs with meteor swings or even using magic. Both earth and lightning magic are abilities he can use in his games, raining bolts from the sky or creating boulders to send flying horizontally. He could even take techniques his grandson Gilius Rockhead used in later games as inspiration for some of his animations, like how Simon did from Richter in Ultimate, and he could even ride around on one of the chicken monsters with his side special. Maybe his super could have him wield the Golden Axe itself?
SEGA! Knights!
Sonic Team's done more than just the flagship series of the company, you know. They also created the cult classic series Knights, starring the titular rebellious Knight Marin from the World of Dreams. Their abilities may not seem super flashy to most, but Knights would be a killer combo character with lots of air dashes and fast dashing attacks, as well as kicks that make them a menace to recovering opponents. I imagine they'd also be the only character capable of using grabs in the air, and would probably even have some limited flight capabilities, making them extremely floaty and hard to catch in the sky. The drill dash would be a nightmare to an Akira or Gilius player. And since they're functionally the same, let's throw in Riala as an alternate skin. Knights and Riala are both shapeshifters as well, so they could probably transform parts of their bodies to perform attacks, a la Battletoads.
Sakura Shinguji!
Raise your hand if you know who this is or what series she's from. Yeah, that's what I thought. But what may surprise you is that Sakura Taisen, or Sakura Wars, is extremely popular in Japan, and for a long time was considered a core Sega IP, with Sakura herself being voted by Japanese fans as the third most important Sega character of all time, behind Sonic and someone else who's upcoming. The Sakura Wars games were extremely innovative for both visual novels and tactics titles, and I want to make sure it gets its flowers. Sakura is the titular character and series mascot. An extremely capable swordswoman who routinely battles demons, she is our Marth, at least when she's still building up her spiritual power. At max, she can summon her Kobu, a mech she can pilot, to wreak havoc for a while, and though she can be KO'd in this state, its super armor puts even Dr. Eggman's to shame, and it also has a sword, so it still has disjointed attacks. Never underestimate a beauty with a katana or giant mech. Oh, and while we're at it, considering they're so similar, let's give the new Sakura from the reboot a bit of love as an alternate skin.
Axel Stone!
Hailing from the mean streets of Wood Oak City, former police officer and bare-knuckle brawler Axel Stone comes bursting in with his fists ready to fly. Axel's not exactly the fastest fighter around, but he makes up for it with good aerial attacks, a solid set of defensive stats, and punishing specials that can send opponents flying pretty early. His full moveset from Streets of Rage 2 is included, as well as plenty of his newer abilities from Streets of Rage 4, and even the ability to spawn and use a lead pipe as a weapon for some disjoint on killing attacks. His Grand Upper and Dragon Crush moves will send your opponents into a rage themselves, especially if you toss that pipe at them when they're trying to recover from one of those devastating blows.
Aye aye!
Don't underestimate Sega's cutest little guy. Ai is a force to be reckoned with. While he's got middling speed, Ai's jumps and recovery is incredible, especially since he has a glide, taken directly from the monkey target minigame. but his speed is massively improved when getting into his ball, which he uses for numerous moves. Though this is a double-edged sword. While he can bowl foes out of the way and is immune to grabs while in the ball, if they can manage to stop his momentum, he's a sitting duck in the ball, or sitting monkey if you prefer. Or, if they hit him even harder, while he'll take no damage, it takes time to get out of the ball, and you won't have that time as you're flying off the stage, destined for a fallout. Ai's regular moves mostly just use basic punches, kicks, and whacking you with his backpack, but he can also drop banana peels on the stage to trip foes up. But don't worry, it's toned down in comparison to Diddy Kong. Besides, our boy deserves a little snack break from time to time, right?
Goro Majima.
While I definitely love to include Kiryu-chan, the jury's still out on whether the new RGG studio devs are up to having him included in fighting games where women can participate. So if you ask me, the next best thing is to include the greatest character in Sega history, who just so happens to hail from the same series. Majima's main tools of the trade include his trusty Demon Fire Knife, with which he has a lot of fast, short-range poke tools and flashy specials, though he can absolutely also use his fists and legs in attacks taken from his Breaker and Thug styles as well. And maybe he can even function as a stance change character between his hybrid Mad Dog style and this newly introduced Sea Dog style from Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, to give him some projectile tools. Majima's got a little bit of everything, and while he's pretty fast, he doesn't compare to the likes of the Sonic Crew or even Beat.
Opa!
Remember how I mentioned Sakura was the third most important Sega character from that poll behind Sonic and one other? Yeah, that other is the sentient spaceship of Fantasy Zone, Opa Opa, and he's here to wreak some havoc of his very own. Like Knights, Opa Opa has a free flight mode that allows him to zip around in the air and edgeguard like crazy, but his airspeed itself isn't anything to write home about, and his normal attacks involve him smacking you with his wings, legs, or even charging into you face first, and he has some projectiles as well. His gimmick is taken directly from Fantasy Zone itself, the shop. As you fight, money will drop from enemy fighters that can be picked up, or automatically given to him when KOing a foe. It can be spent to amplify his speed, shots, bombs, and even his wing's size to increase their range. But be careful, if he's KO'd, you'll lose half your money and reset all aspects back to their default form. Opa Opa is a tricky character who relies on quick, weak attacks and keeping opponents at bay with walls of projectiles and chasing attacks.
Bayonetta.
I hesitate to even mention here, as I'd like to not give PTSD to Smash 4's competitive player base, but let's be real, Ultimate managed to tone her down to a much more reasonable state. And speaking of Smash, unlike with Sonic before her, I think Sakurai nailed her playstyle to a T with the one he chose for her. It feels just like you're playing Bayonetta, with flashy combos and stylish attacks, and chasing opponents with gunshots to keep that combo going. But I don't want to just translate her exactly one-to-one, so maybe some of her aerials and normals could utilize other weapons from the first three mainline titles, Shoraba, Alruna, and the Yo-Yos for example. Yeah, giving her Ness's edge-guarding down smash, Marth's forward and back air, and some of the Belmont's normals would really tell Smash fans just how well they have it. Let the Queen slay.
Alice Landale.
Hailing from the world of Phantasy Star, the legendary heroine Alice Landale arrives to be our equivalent of Link and Hero style, at least when it comes to normal attacks. Alice wields a sword and shield like any traditional fighter class. She's not super complicated, but not everyone needs to be. She's got a good projectile in the form of a fireball spell, a teleport for a decent recovery, and she can heal herself with a spell as well, though it's got a decently long cooldown between uses. Naturally, she can also use a shield bash to deflect projectiles back at her attacker as well.
Arl Nadia.
The legendary magic user from the world of Monogatari, and now protagonist of the Puyo Puyo series, is no stranger to getting transported to a new world with new rules, and as a master of both elemental magic and the game of Puyo Puyo itself, she's got a lot to bring to the table in a fight. Elemental spells to blast at opponents near and far, including fire, ice, thunder, wind, and earth magic, dark spells to steal health from opponents, and even magic that can cause opponents to sleep, reverse their controls, and more. Arl's a force to be reckoned with. And that's before even talking about setting up Puyos on the stage and causing them to burst into explosives by lining them up. Arl can quickly turn the stage into a minefield for her foes, but she's relatively light and her melee options are very limited.
Alex Kidd.
The original character mascot of SEGA before a certain blue hedgehog came into the picture, Alex Kidd. His attacks aren't terribly impressive, and considering his size, they are very stubby, though he's got some tricks up his sleeve. He can ride his pedicopter freely and shoot some projectiles from it, though like Wario's bike in Smash Bros, it can be destroyed. His strong attacks utilize Janken techniques, aka rock, paper, and scissors, and depending on where on the body they hit, they can deal powerful knockback. Rock hits the legs hard, paper hits the head hard, and scissors hit the arms and body hard. And he even has some ninjutsu techniques and tools from his time in Shinobi World, like shuriken and teleportation jutsu. He's a squirrely little fighter who you'll need to pin down to KO, but doesn't have a lot of mix-up options to get out of a jam.
Jack Frost.
Yes, SEGA does in fact own Atlus, and thus their games are on the table for potential fighters. And it would be criminal not to include the eternal SMT mascot and he homeboy, Jack Frost. Ironically, his playstyle shares a name with another iconic SMT demon, but I digress. Jack's fast, agile, and while he's on the lighter side, he's actually closer to midweight. Jack's fist attacks deal a debuff that can freeze an opponent when stacked high enough, and despite being so cute, his animations are surprisingly nasty, with stuff like curb stomps and attempts to poke out enemies' eyes. Jack Frost can also sometimes learn light magic even without demon fusion, so he'd probably have a few spells to cast beams of energy in addition to his ice projectiles, which would also apply the debuff. Oh, and he has to have both an alt color of Black Frost and his Rido cosplay as an alternate skin. For his super, I bet he calls upon the other Jack Bros, like Pyro Jack, Black Frost, Jack the Ripper, and King Frost.
Ooh la la.
Everyone, get ready. It's time for Ooh La La's Swingin' Report Show. The most popular reporter on Space Channel 5 enters the battle with a unique and stylish fighting style, using her rhythmic movements and dancing techniques as incidental attacks, firing her tension blasters, and using her instrumental prowess with a guitar to blast foes away with a burst of sound waves. I imagine she'd also share April's gimmick from NASB 2, ratings. With higher ratings, her attacks are more potent and her microphone special would be a better KO move. Remember that combo route? Up, tilt, down, air, forward, air, chew, chew, go! Oh, and Pudding gets to be an alternate skin, since she has all of Ooh La La's skills as well.
Blaze.
Next up on the docket, we finally get another Sonic character in the form of Blaze the Cat. While it's been a long time since her last game truly in the spotlight, she's made a lot of appearances through the years, and she plays as a bit of a parallel to Sonic and Shadow, taking some of the best aspects of both using her pyrokinetic abilities, setting up pockets of burning terrain that can light opponents on fire for a brief duration. She's got projectiles that aren't as fast as Shadow's Chaos Spears, and she herself is a bit slower than both Sonic and Shadow, but her burst movement abilities turn her entire body into a massive hitbox as she uses the Flame Boost. Her attacks are also a lot more disciplined than Sonic or Shadow's, requiring good spacing as opposed to the more simplistic plan of throwing out hitboxes that Sonic and Shadow rely on.
Ryo Hazuki.
Ryo Hazuki takes a break from his hunt to find Lan Di to throw down with some of his fellow SEGA All-Stars, and he brings the Hazuki fighting style with him. A mix between jujitsu and karate, Ryo shockingly doesn't play similarly to any of the other martial artists here. He's all about baiting out an opponent's attack and going for grabs and throws, though he's not rigidly stuck to staying on the defensive either. He's got good poke tools and he's pretty fast. Ryo's an athletic guy after all. And hey, we may just have our first Platfighter character to canonically be forklift certified. Yes, absolutely that would be his super move, just using a forklift to shoot you into the sky. He did get fired from that job after all. Maybe this is how.
Ristar.
Does anyone actually remember Ristar? It's not like SEGA goes out of their way to use him and stuff, though he's made a few cameos in crossover material. Regardless, Ristar absolutely deserves a chance to make a comeback, and what better way than with an appearance in a crossover platform fighter? Fun fact, he's actually in one already, unofficially. Smash Bros. Crusades had him since damn near the beginning, and he's a really fun character to use, if a bit simple. Ristar's game plan is to use his stretchy limbs to grab you and either pull himself to you or to pull you to him, and that's what he'd do here. His range may be great, but those long limbs are a hurt box too, so he's got to be really careful when he throws his grabs out. But if nothing else, he's got one of the best recoveries in the entire game at his disposal, using one of these spin poles to rocket himself like a shooting star, which of course is a hitbox.
Bonanza Bros.
A long-forgotten title in the stealth genre, long before the days of Metal Gear or Hitman, Bonanza Bros is actually a really fun title, if very much a game of its era. Mobo and Robo join the battle with a number of tools of the thieves' trade at their disposal, as well as some stuff they lifted from the cops or security. Dynamite and bombs to lay around the stage, their trusty pistols for zoning, and their packs full of stolen loot to smack foes around with. But their game plan relies on positioning the bros around the stage. Pick which brother you want at the start of the match, and you can swap to the other at basically any time, provided they're both on the ground. The bro you aren't controlling will step into the background to hide, and you'll pick up the other one wherever they are. The two do not share damage, but do share stock total, and if one bro is KO'd, the other cannot switch to them. Robo, the taller one, is a bit faster but lighter, and Mobo is slower but harder to send flying. When they emerge from a hiding spot, they also have an attack that spawns in a door that they slam open, damaging foes in the direction they're facing.
Ichiban Kasuga.
Yakuza is big enough to absolutely warrant multiple reps here, and while we can't pull in the original protagonist, the new hero of Yokohama is more than worthy of taking the title. And Ichi's personality absolutely fits the tone of the game we're building. A heavier character of average speed, Ichiban uses skills from both of his exclusive jobs in the newer titles, Freelancer and Hero. While he's not a stance changer like Majima, his stubbier, faster attacks rely on punches and kicks, whereas his stronger attacks and KO moves pull out the hero's bat. His grabs are naturally also really powerful, and both him and Majima would have shirtless variants displaying those awesome back tattoos. I imagine Ichi would also get two different supers. One where he uses Tag Team Essence of Mayhem with either the original party or the new party depending on costume, but if he's on his last stock, he would use Essence of Orbital Laser. I know they retconned it, but damn it, it's just too cool, and I did not spend hours in that management sim bowing to investors to not get to use it here too.
Amigo.
Everyone's favorite samba-loving monkey joins the battle wielding his trusty pair of maracas and a sense of rhythm that gets everyone ready to dance. Amigo's got pretty middling stats all around the board, but his attacks as a whole are intended to combo together nicely, and he gets rewarded for keeping that combo going with bonus damage totals depending on how many beats he puts into a combo. As a dancer archetype, he also does have some decent evasion tools using dancing techniques, and his super would absolutely have his opponents try to match the rhythm in a short samba festival. With this energetic monkey around, Anyone would want to go to Brazil, right?
The Magician.
Hailing from the zombie-infested halls of Curian Mansion, Dr. Curian's dangerous monster, the Magician, finds his way to the battlefield. The largest fighter on the roster, as well as the heaviest, he levitates above the ground and is relatively floaty despite his weight. And though he has a good dash speed, his attacks are relatively slow, though they hit like a truck. His general playstyle would involve throwing fireballs at fighters, which can increase in size but decrease in speed, summoning some of the flying enemies from the game to form a rotating shield around himself, and by using flying charges like Ridley's up special in Smash Bros, though this makes his specials very predictable. His game plan is extremely simple, and though he's big and scary, by playing around his tools, he'd prove not too difficult of a foe to fell.
Selvaria Bless.
Arriving in style from the world of Valkyria Chronicles is Selvaria, the invading general of the first game, though her appearance here is mostly based on her appearance in the third. Wielding a mighty lance and shield, as well as the powers of the Valkyrie themselves, Selvaria has wide, sweeping and poking attacks, blows with her shield, which can also be used to nullify projectiles, and the ability to teleport a short distance and shoot beams from her lance. She also has the ability to set up a subordinate soldier to fire on her command, or have a blast of tank fire rain down in a predetermined distance from her from off-screen. She also has a few attacks involving her rifle as well.
Jackie Bryant.
Jackie Bryant, the Blue Flash, is ready to throw down on the battlefield. Deceptively fast and relatively beginner-friendly, Jackie's combos are bread and butter, but extremely effective, as well as stylish. Of course, that's just the way he likes it. Jackie's all about freedom and letting the moment take you as an indie racer, so having a relatively free-flowing combo game is perfect for him, though while it has easy execution, he suffers in other areas. No projectiles, bad throws, and he's a bit of combo bait himself, especially with a tall hurtbox. Let's see if you can walk the walk with Jackie.
Team Chaotix.
Well, it may not be the computer room, but that doesn't mean Team Chaotix is any less excited to join the fun. A trio fighter that act and run together, their playstyle leans into the core gimmick of Sonic heroes. Vector is the bruiser of the group, attacking with his fists, kicks, and even a bite. He can also breathe fire with neutral special. Charmy and Espio handle the more complicated stuff, specifically the other three specials, with Charmy acting as the trio's up special and being able to sting people, giving them a slowdown debuff temporarily, and Espio using kunai and shuriken to throw at enemies, as well as make himself temporarily invisible, removing him from the team's active hurtbox before doing a dashing attack shortly afterward.
Joe Musashi.
Speaking of ninja, Espio's only part of Team Chaotix's kit, and every fighting game worth its salt needs a true ninja, or at least the romanticized version. Luckily, the Shinobi games exist, and so we're pulling from them. I did consider Hatsuma from the reboot, but at the end of the day, I decided to go with the original protagonist, Joe Musashi, primarily because he's going to be in the reboot that is releasing soon. He also wields kunai and shuriken, but also has access to ninpo magic like fireballs and teleportation, though he primarily fights using his sword, the Hazy Moon.
Kid Chameleon.
In crossovers like this, sometimes we need to celebrate the good and the bad of a company. While I can't necessarily call the game bad based on the fact I haven't played it for more than a few minutes, Kid Chameleon doesn't have an amazing reputation. But I will note that it has potential for a genuinely fun moveset here. Casey has the ability to switch forms with masks. The kid looks like a parody of the Fonz, and honestly that's half the reason I picked him. By default, he can throw punches and kicks, as well as ride his skateboard with his side special, but what makes him really unique is how he uses his masks. Depending on the mask he chooses, his specials and some of his normal attacks will change. You can change into Red Stealth, a samurai form that wields a sword, Maniacs, a slasher film-inspired fighter wielding an axe, and Cyclops, a futuristic cyborg with a ray gun. His up special also takes advantage of Micromax, his human-fly hybrid form, for a very potent recovery tool, though at the end it will always force him back into default form, making you need to swap to a different mask if you want to change the kit again. You can also only spend a limited amount of time with each mask before it needs to recharge.
SEGA! Matoi.
An unconventional pick for sure, but I wanted to represent both halves of the Phantasy Star universe, and Matoi was the obvious pick due to her popularity. She's not explicitly stated to have the Force class, but in gameplay she acts like one, which I thought made a good contrast to the more D&D fighter-esque build of Alice. Matoi is a mage through and through, with each of her specials utilizing fire, ice, or lightning magic in different ways, dependent on the direction of the special. And like Sora in Smash Ultimate, they cycle, though in a different order, and on a special-by-special basis. Neutral special goes fire to ice to lightning, side special goes ice to lightning to fire, and down special goes lightning to fire to ice. After hitting enough enemies and building up a photon meter, Matoi can also choose to either unleash light or dark magic in a bursting attack, which have different damage and knockback, and also apply passive effects. Light makes enemies take more damage from attacks for a short time, dark makes them passively take more knockback for a short time.
Nef.
The demon god from Altered Beast arrives on the field of battle, choosing, as is Sega tradition at this point, in his Van Vader form, aka the big purple rhino you probably only know from Wreck-It Ralph. But I didn't just choose this form for tradition, I chose it due to the playstyle it can offer. As a massive rhino, his attacks pack power unmatched in pure damage and knockback, and he can rush around the field at relatively high speed. Though to give him a little extra variety, I also wanted to include his ability to shoot lightning at foes, though it's a very predictable attack. Don't be on the end of one of his charges though, it may be the last thing you do in that match.
Emerald.
I wanted to go with something a little more unconventional as my next pick from the Sonic universe. And then I remembered that the series kinda had their own platform fighter series on the GBA, one that, shockingly, actually got referenced recently during the build-up to Sonic X Shadow Generations. And thus, we bring in the central figure to that series, Emerald, the ancient robot. Emerald's default moveset isn't particularly impressive, using mostly recycled attack animations from Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Shadow. But what makes Emerald special is that he can use his down special to scan different techniques of enemy fighters and then apply them to himself, even including weapon creation. He actually starts with no other special moves, but he can hold up to 3 at any time, which he keeps either until the end of the match or until he chooses to overwrite one. These moves can be from any of the other fighters on the field. Facing Majima, Nef, and Bayonetta, copy Bayonetta's guns, Majima's spinning knife up special, and Nef's charge to create your own moveset. Emerald can be extremely powerful with synergistic attacks, or quite weak if he copies ones that don't work together well. He'd take a lot of extra development time, but screw it, this is a dream game anyway.
Gemini Sunrise.
Yes, it is pronounced Gemini, not Gemini. I meant it when I said that Sakura Wars is far more important than most people give it credit for, and though I considered Erika from Sakura Wars 3 and Hatsuho from Sakura Wars 2019, I couldn't not give it to my favorite girl from the series, the cowgirl samurai, Gemini, from Sakura Wars So Long My Love. Voiced by the ever-talented Laura Bailey, Gemini would, unlike Sakura, not use her mech in her main moveset, instead reserving it for her super attack. She's got more than enough spunk and combat ability outside of it. She even got a whole spin-off game about it. Gemini fights with both a 6-shooter revolver and a katana, and I imagine that just like in the Project X Zone games, she'd have a move referencing her horse, Larry, where she charges as a fiery projection of him appears. We also know that she loves baseball, so heck, let's throw her in a pitch as a special as well.
Epsilon Eagle.
I wanted to grab at least one character from one of the legendary treasure titles that graced the Genesis, and while Gunstar Heroes is the fan favorite, I don't think its characters have a particularly interesting art style or a huge amount of potential as a fighter. Now this guy? Exact opposite. Look at that design. He's just begging to be put in a fighting game. Besides that, he's the closest we'll get to Falco. While he hails from a run-and-gun title, those claws aren't just for show either. He's got some potent melee attacks as well. Epsilon's neutral special changes his ammunition, with 5 options available. The Buster Force, a rapid-fire weapon, Sword Force, a laser beam attack that is big but only has middling speed, Flame Force, a flamethrower, Ranger Force, a scatter shot that moves in 3 directions, and Homing Force, slower moving blasts that home in on foes. His side special and up special are both teleporting dashes, and his down special, Counter Force, can turn incoming projectiles into health. A bit of Fox, Falco, and Ness. Sure to be a fan favorite.
SEGA! Cherry Hunter.
Joining Axel on these raging streets is a pop-up star from Streets of Rage 4. Cherry Hunter, daughter of Adam and niece of Skate. While her general melee attacks with her legs and fists aren't quite as damaging as Axel, what sets her apart is her special moves, most of which involve her pulling out the guitar strapped to her back, be it to smash an enemy in the face with it, or blast them back with a mighty rocking sound wave. Compared to Axel though, she's also faster and got better jumps, as well as some disjoint play with her guitar and triple Townsend, a move clearly inspired by Terry Bogart's Power Geyser. She's also got a dive kick attack in the air, all adding up to a more flashy gameplay style than Axel.
SEGA! Shogun.
This may surprise you, but after Sonic, Sega's most successful IP isn't Yakuza or Persona, it's Total War. And it's that fact that convinced me that I kind of had to represent it here, even if it's not really my style of game generally. The Shogun himself, taking his appearance from Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, plays like a traditional samurai archetype, wielding a nodachi and having a very disciplined stance, using mostly dueling techniques, parries, and well-timed strikes. But like Selvaria before him, he too can set up his men and command them on the field, though whereas her men are generally projectile-focused, the Shogun's army is primarily melee or mounted combatants, though he can command an archer as well. He can set up a Naginata samurai and command them to strike with his extended reach on command, send a mounted cavalry unit to charge, or the aforementioned archer to fire.
SEGA! Arthur.
Fighting the Shogun and his horsemen under his command might feel a bit weird to our next fighter. Arthur, from the world of Shining Force. I considered the main protagonist, but they felt very generic to me, as did many of the original units. Then I found out about Arthur and was immediately sold. A Centaur Paladin is just the level of goofy we need in this game. Wielding a lance and some baseline magic projectiles with different properties, Arthur is a mix of techniques from numerous other fighters. Deceptively fast, with excellent jumping skills, wide range with his weapon and his powerful hindquarter kicks, he's got the elemental versatility of Matoi, speed closer to the Sonic cast, and range like Selvaria. What more could you ask for from a heroic knight like him?
SEGA! Vice.
Next up, we have one I was very excited to talk about. Vice, protagonist of the cult classic Skies of Arcadia. Please, Sega, re-release this game on modern systems. An air pirate and member of the Noble Blue Rogues, Vice fights with 2 lightsaber-esque cutlasses, which is the coolest sentence I may have ever spoken. His attacks are lightning fast and don't do a lot of knockback, making him an excellent rushdown character. Naturally, his special attacks are derived from his super moves in the game. Cutlass Fury, a series of rapid melee attacks, Rain of Swords, which creates a series of energy attacks that rain down from the sky, and Skull Shield, a counterattack summoning the spirits of pirates of old to attack. Naturally, his super is his ultimate attack, Pirate's Wrath, blasting them with a bolt of lightning from stormy skies and attacking them with slashes in the shape of a skull and crossbones. Vice actually has 2 alternate skins. Vise, the imposter who impersonates him, and his gear as a special party member from Valkyria Chronicles, though unlike in that game, this is purely a cosmetic difference.
Honey.
Jumping in from the world of fighting vipers is Honey, the bubbly wannabe fashion designer. I'm adding her in for a couple of reasons. First, to represent a bit more of an obscure series, second, because it's kind of a sister series to Virtua Fighter, and third, because there is a Sonic character based off of her, so interactions with the Sonic cast could be very fun. She's a pretty notable pick-up-and-play character in her home games, but I want to give her a bit more of a high skill ceiling here, since Jackie is meant to be the beginner fighting game character. Her specials use some of her notable named attacks from her home game: Cat Punch, Cat Uppercut, Fork Through, and Built Horse. Some are used primarily for positioning, whereas others are for aggressive attacks. She maintains her attack properties being very fast, and she's very aggressive with combos, but her offstage play is not very good at all.
SEGA! Harrier.
Welcome to the Fantasy Zone. Get ready! Bringing his trusty space laser alongside him as well as his jetpack, Harrier may seem a bit one-note, and he is relatively simple all things considered, with one unique mechanic. Harrier's pack lets him hover for extended periods of time, and he can do all of his aerials out of his hover without issue. Peach haters, beware. But unlike Peach in Smash, Harrier can actually also move in the 8 cardinal and intercardinal directions, giving himself a Magneto-esque air dash, and his special attacks can be cancelled out of his dashes, giving him unquestioned mobility, though notably his projectiles are otherwise very predictable, and most of his attacks are kicks, so it's much safer to be above him than other characters.
SEGA! Temjin.
Next up on the block, we have the MVB-04G Temjin from Virtual On Cyber Troopers, or just Temjin for short. A multi-purpose combat infantry unit equipped with multiple weapons, Temjin is relatively large amongst the cast, but overall has middling stats otherwise. Its melee attacks take advantage of its beam sword, while its specials involve its beam rifle to shoot, its power bombs, and even an energy wave from the beam sword. Or even its gliding ram, a move where it rushes forward using its energy blade like a lance.
The Ooze.
Alright, we have to have at least one true what the fuck kind of character in the base roster, and for me, I had to choose Dr. Kane, aka the Ooze from the Sega Genesis game, The Ooze. Don't take a shot every time Ooze is said. After being experimented on, Dr. Daniel Kane became a sentient blob of green ooze with only one emotion: pure, unadulterated rage. Due to his amorphous form, the ooze has an incredibly unconventional playstyle. Incredibly slow and with horrible jumps, the ooze can actually spit parts of his body, shrinking in size as he does, making him lighter. But if enough of him ends up in one place, more than 50% of his total body, that becomes the active player character. You can pick up ooze again by touching it. His attacks, however, are relatively damaging, fast, and have long ranges, at the cost of those slippery attacks being able to take damage themselves. He's got some mild super armor on some of his strongest attacks, though.
SEGA! Aegis.
The anti-shadow suppression weapon and darling of the Persona 3 fanbase, Aegis joins the battle, bringing not only all of her built-in firearms and her Persona Athena, but also her Orgia mode, increasing her speed and attack power for a short time, but slowing her down and decreasing it after she overheats. Basically, we're just pulling her directly from Persona 4 Arena. Aegis is a monster there, and she'd be one here too, but with a very high skill ceiling, as she has to balance Orgia mode and ammo consumption in order to win the day. I did consider allowing her to wield the wild card, but I ultimately chose not to, as Aegis already has so many tools that we don't want to risk overcomplicating her.
Segata Sanshiro.
For the final fighter of the base roster, we simply must have Sega's strongest warrior, the master of play himself, Segata Sanshiro. For those unfamiliar, get familiar, because this marketing mascot may be the greatest of all time. He would wander the world finding children and ensure they were playing the greatest game console of all time, Sega Saturn, by beating the shit out of them. His knowledge of Sega games is unmatched, and he even saved the company from a missile launched by the competition before riding it into the stars. As for how he would fight, he would make use of martial arts as well as some of the abilities from his commercials, such as being able to duplicate himself for an army of Segatas as his super move, kicking a baseball with the strength of a home run, punching so hard it causes an explosion, riding on the rocket, and of course, the famous Segata Sanshiro suplex for anyone who dares not play Sega Saturn. He'd also have his Santa Sanshiro outfit as an alternate costume. Beware his headbutt. It can break through a dozen cinder blocks. Imagine what it could do to you. Heck, he can even throw House of the Dead zombies towards you like Frank West in MVC to set you up for one of his signature flying kicks. Team him up with Sakura for a true retro throwback, and maybe even an achievement? You must play Sega Saturn. And with that, we have our base roster. Not too shabby if I do say so myself. A good mix of playstyles, cartoony and realistic looking characters, obscure and well known, from the arcade and Genesis era all the way up to the modern day. But you all know me, I can't just stop at base. I'm gonna do a couple seasons of DLC as well. But before we cover that, I'd like to talk about a few other things. Some characters I decided to pass up on and why, and then some ideas for stages. Let's start with the characters. From just the Sonic series alone, I had 3 options I decided not to go with. First up, Silver the Hedgehog. While I know he's a relatively popular character despite his origins, I for one personally don't care for him. And while he could have some interesting moves with his telekinetic abilities, I didn't want a 4th speedy hedgehog in the lineup and wanted to prioritize more interesting choices from this series. Which is why I ultimately chose to not include Rouge the Bat either. I love Rouge, but drawing purely from her playable appearances, I couldn't think of anything to make her particularly unique, and though she could be an aerial-focused character, I already have a few of those, so I left her out. A more unique pick I ultimately passed on was Fang the Hunter, aka Fang the Sniper, aka Knack the Weasel. I liked the idea of having him, especially seeing as he's been popping up in more games recently, but ultimately scrapped him due to having more interesting ideas to choose from, especially since we already have a decent amount of characters toting guns and blasters already. I know Vector Man has a cult following, but after looking over his skills, he ended up being too similar to Temjin, and the latter just had more going on to work with. Sorry to the Vector Man fans, but he is in Project M Remix, so you've at least got him in a Flatfighter already. Blaze Fielding from the Streets of Rage series I also considered, but ultimately left out to give Cherry the spot to give some new blood, and Cherry had the more interesting kit. Lastly, Jack Kamen from the Wii cult classic Mad World was another one I really wanted, but Sega kinda deemed it a flop and don't seem keen on remembering it exists, considering to this day we still don't have a port to modern systems. Though a chainsaw wielder would have been really cool. Before we jump into the DLC fighters, let's take a quick look at the stages I chose. I'm not going to go into layouts, but as a platform fighter, every stage should be different. I didn't give every playable character a stage, but I gave a healthy mix of obvious choices and some weird picks, as well as trying to spread the love out to as many series as possible. The only series with more than one stage is, of course, Sonic. The stages I chose for their universe include Green Hill Zone, which at this point is obligatory for any Sonic media, Studiopolis Zone due to wanting a more modern stage and loving the aesthetic and music, Space Colony Arc for that Sonic Adventure 2 nostalgia, and Planet Wisp in its industrialized form to have a second stage for 3D Sonic. Next up, the Grand Imperial Theater from Sakura Wars, the most iconic recurring locale of the series, and to have a stage set on, well, a stage. I imagine it could have scene changes where the curtains close for a moment, and then a new platform layout appears when they open. Highway Zero from Jet Set Radio is next, with the locale being tagged by the GGs recently. Jumble Jungle has moving platforms that never leave a consistent layout. It hails from Super Monkey Ball. Spring Valley from Nights into Dreams takes place on a platform in the foreground, rotating around the center of the area, and if not in the match, Knights themselves will appear in the background. This stage also comes with a Christmas reskin, just like the original game. Streets of Rage is a self-explanatory stage, taking place in a dangerous, crime-ridden district, taking cues specifically from the most recent entry in the franchise. An unusual choice, but I selected Avalon Forest to represent the Bayonetta universe, as it's a unique environment and could even bring out Bayonetta Origin's unique art style for an incredibly gorgeous stage. Sunny Carnival takes place in the hometown of Amigo and friends from Samba de Amigo, and features the fight taking place on the rooftops during a carnival parade. Oboro Remains is Joe's home stage, taking place in the burnt remains of the Oboro clan's village from the most recent Shinobi title. Platforms can break here if stood on for too long. The top floor of the Millennium Tower from the Like a Dragon titles makes for an extremely cinematic stage. You can break the windows to throw people to their doom just like a heat action, or pick up nearby furniture to hit enemies with. The Albatross from Skies of Arcadia flies through the sky near Pirate's Isle, and takes place on the decks of the whole ship. Acropolis Graveyard is based on the first level of Altered Beast, and features both pillars and headstones as platforms. Turtle Island is a simple stage, being located at a fortress near Death Adder's castle in Golden Axe, which looms ominously in the distant background. The Space Symphony is a completely flat stage from Space Channel 5, which takes place on a luxury space cruiser. Just as an attack from the Rhythm Rogues takes place, they'll dance in the background. Curian Mansion takes place just outside of the mansion itself on a raised platform, but zombies are trying to crawl up the platform to attack the fighters above, but they can never quite make it. Castle Randgriz, from the Valkyria Chronicles series, is a 2-level stage that allows you to jump up to the second floor or drop down from the middle, while the castle is sieged by enemy forces. Watch out for shots from tanks. Dryzen Plant hails from Phantasy Star Online 2, and takes place in the middle of the plant itself, with massive energy tanks acting as platforms that can be broken. Primp Magic Academy is where student mages from Puyo Puyo study, and takes place outside of the campus itself, with the massive Puyo Puyos visible on the top of the building. For a stage representing Persona, I actually chose to use the cinema lobby from Persona Q2 rather than have a stage from a specific game, so we can get cameos from SEES, the investigation team, or the Phantom Thieves, or even some of the Velvet Room attendants. They would be in their normal forms as well, rather than the chibi look from the original game. Next, we've got some special stages, some of which are from games without playable characters, such as the Carrier Zone from Afterburner, Circus Park from Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, Dinosaur Canyon from Daytona USA, and in my opinion, the most inspired choice, Night of the Mutants from Comic Zone, which would allow you to rip open the sides of the panels to knock foes into different environments, making KOs a bit harder to pull off here, since you'd need to knock foes away with hard enough attacks to break the panel walls. Our other special stages are notable for having crossover elements. Virtua Beach from the original Virtua Fighter features the Red Lightning car from the Outrun games in the background, complete with its riders alongside other Virtua Fighter cameos, and even has a stage hazard. Some sort of crazy taxi might drive to the arena and knock fighters around. Fantasy Zone starts out as a level from the series of the same name, but also features enemies and creatures from Space Harrier. The two series do take place in the same universe, after all. And if neither are in the match, Harrier and Opa Opa will be trying to save the world together in the background. Burning Depths is an idea that I pulled directly from All-Stars Racing Transformed, taking place in the second level from Burning Rangers, with part of the environment on fire and a massive area covered in water, featuring a cameo from Echo the Dolphin, replacing the dolphin from the original game. Our last stage is a dock near a tranquil bass pond based on SEGA bass fishing, and features Big the Cat sitting in the background throwing his rod out, trying to catch Froggy, though he'll more likely just catch a bass. Or if you're really lucky, or some may say unlucky, may end up catching the infamous Seaman himself. Might want to toss that one back in big. But I know what you're thinking. Get on with the rest of the roster already. We ended our base roster with 48 characters, which I think is a good number already, but I think we can push it just a little further. I'm going to do 2 seasons of DLC, but they'd actually not have the same number of characters. Season 1 will have 3, and Season 2 4, leading up to a final total of 55, which I feel is just a nice number to end on. And while we're not going to splurge on them, This is where I feel a few guest fighters can join in, though I have one rule. They have to have a connection to SEGA. So, let's get cracking.
Jet.
First up, we gotta get at least a little more Sonic rep in here. One per season. First up, Jet the Hawk from Sonic Riders. I know he's pretty popular amongst Sonic fans, and more importantly, he's got something to set him apart. Jet would fight exclusively while hovering on his extreme gear, and have a moveset that utilizes it for dealing damage with charges, spinning the board itself, doing acrobatic kicks, and even having him switch temporarily to other extreme gears like the bike or skate styles, though the Type J will be the one used in most circumstances.
Hatsune Miku.
Our first guest fighter is everyone's favorite synthetic J-pop diva, Hatsune Miku. SEGA publishes all of her games after all. Miku will utilize her microphone in many of her attacks, and she focuses primarily on dealing massive knockback through sound waves, but deals low damage, and many of her attacks are actually just different forms of her dancing, though she's also got some moves and taunts giving her the famous favorite snack of hers, the leek. Miku and another one of our guest fighters are absolutely here to get people talking. How many new faces will buy this game just because Miku is here?
Taro Yamada.
Most people probably have no idea who the hell Taro is, and fair. His games are Japanese exclusive, but honestly, I wish they weren't because they seem super cool. Taro becomes a Super Sentai hero after he receives the suit on total accident when ordering pizza, and it grants him super strength, speed, the ability to manipulate the elements like lightning and explosive spheres, as well as to summon an energy sword. All of his techniques are just begging to be put into a fighting game, and there's no better time to get him in here. Maybe he could have some special interactions with villains like Neff or the Ooze.
Toe Jam and Earl.
We start Season 2 off with another guest. I wanted a character heavily associated with the Genesis, but not owned by SEGA, and it eventually came down to Earthworm Jim or Toe Jam and Earl, and while I absolutely prefer the former, I gave the spot to these two both for being a duo fighter, which we don't have yet, shockingly, and because they were a Genesis exclusive franchise. These two alien rappers from Planet Funkotron were from an early example of a roguelike title, and I figured we could incorporate that into their moveset, with them getting a present after delivering so much damage, which could be in any number of items from their games. Icarus wings, rocket skates, rose seeds to create stage hazards, root beer to give them a burping attack, slingshots that shoot tomatoes. You'll never know what you get. Of course, they also have attacks that they can always use, including sending out music note projectiles, breakdancing attacks, and Earl swinging Toe Jam around as a bludgeoning weapon.
Joker.
I considered leaving him off of the roster to let Aigis have breathing room as the sole Persona rep, but the series is too profitable for SEGA to just go with one character, and without a doubt, Persona 5 is the most popular, and Joker is a character with an extremely slick design. That said, I want to make him different than in Smash, so rather than exclusively using Arsene, he can use other Personas. Seeing as he's a wildcard, he'll have access to Neko Shogun, which allows him to self-buff and modify his stats on the fly, making him even more adaptable than his rushdown acrobatics have access to, Alice, which will amp his special moves with Curse Energy, and Yoshitsune, who turns his melee attacks into deadly, hard-hitting strikes. Depending on which persona he has active, attacks also have different elemental effects, with his gunshots and dagger strikes inflicting burn with Neko Shogun, which deals damage over time, shock with Yoshitsune, which after so many hits will stun an opponent, and Alice delivers Curse, though only with specific moves. Manage to deal 120 points of curse damage to trigger Alice's Die For Me effect, an instant kill attack if it hits. Of course, Joker's super still has to be the all-out attack though.
Surge.
I wanted to include something a little different for our final Sonic rep, and with Sonic Racing Cross Worlds set to finally bring in characters from other continuities, I think it's finally time for Surge to make a non-mobile game debut. She's been an absolute takeoff sensation for the IDW Sonic comics, and all in all, is just a really cool design for a character in general. And she's no clone of Sonic. She's a cybernetically enhanced character with aspects of multiple characters, so she pulls in bits and pieces from Sonic, Knuckles, and Shadow's movesets, as well as some of her more recent powers. She can blast stunning bolts of lightning, charge up a dash that creates a damaging shockwave at its origin point for a great get-off-me tool, utilize buzzsaws from absorbing a pink wisp, and even use telekinetic abilities to give her some of that MVC Magneto action, and to say sorry to the fans for not having silver. She's got the speed of Sonic and Shadow, but wants to use it for getting away rather than for long combos. But she's got to stop to line up the best zoning tools, so if you can weave around them, she's a sitting duck to punish.
SEGA! Alien.
For our final fighter and last guest, I wanted to do the complete tonal opposite of Hatsune Miku to bring in another completely unique audience. And SEGA just so happens to have the exclusive rights to create games based on the Alien franchise. So yes, we are bringing a freaking xenomorph into the game. Though, like in MKX, I think we're just gonna call them Alien. Rolls off the tongue better. Sure to be a fan favorite, Alien would be able to crawl along the ground for its dash, impale fighters with its tail like Ridley's Down special, bite them, spit acid, lay down eggs as a trap that release a facehugger to latch on and deal damage if walked over, and of course, use its claws for quick and deadly swiping attacks. It's got great jumps, but a notably predictable recovery, and though it can deal a lot of damage very fast, it gets zoned out by projectiles and disjointed weapons hard. And if you can nail it in the mouth while it's open for a biting attack or spit, it will take critical damage. And hey, if Disney won't sign off on allowing the Xenomorph into the game, Echo the Dolphin has the next best thing with the Vortex Queen, which is very clearly based off the works of H.R. Geiger and the Alien films. And with that, we have our roster. 55 characters spanning over 40 years of Sega's history. From the iconic faces that helped build gaming as a whole, to the newly popular faces of today, from the weird and experimental to tried and true. I think I did pretty good. But what do you think? Did I build the Sega roster you'd be happy with? Anyone you think I missed that I really should have included? Would you want to know my potential Season 3 lineup? Well, here you go. Are you filled with rage that I didn't include Bark the Polar Bear? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, while you're down there, why not leave a like and subscribe so you never miss an upload from me? I hate asking, but it really does help out the channel and helps me to produce more fun content for you. If you really want to help support us, my channel has been approved for YouTube memberships where you can get some cool perks like having your name included as a supporter at the end of my videos. But please, only do so if you can afford it. And a like, comment, and subscribe really does help out the channel on its own. And if you just can't get enough of me, I've got some more great content to check out. Videos about Overwatch, Kingdom Hearts, games that need remix, building the roster for other hypothetical fighting games like a Disney Platfighter, or Multiverses, rest in peace. And my proudest project, a breakdown of 2023 in gaming, and what are the best games from that year in my opinion. But with all that out of the way, my name's been Gigi, the Nerd Incarnate, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I hope you have an incredible day. Peace out.